In October of 1985, Nintendo released the Nintendo Entertainment System to the United States. In Japan, this was known as the Family Computer, or Famicom for short. This version brought new design changes, however. While the Famicom used a top-loading cartridge slot, this version used a front-loading cartridge slot and a more subdued gray and black color scheme as opposed to the bright red one the Famicom used. The controllers were also unique in that they could be removed from the system, whereas the Famicom's controllers were hardwired into the system itself. The NES also brought a plethora of accessories including light guns, joystick attachments, motion-activated gloves, and a huge library of games from third-party developers and their own. This included such classic titles such as Super Mario Bros., where you took on the role of Mario, an Italian plumber who's trying to save the magical Mushroom Kingdom from an evil overlord. The Legend of Zelda, an action-adventure game where you take on the role of a young boy named Link who tries to save the Princess Zelda from the evil Ganon. Or Contra, which is a run-and-gun style shoot-'em-up about a pair of mercenaries who try to take down a terrorist organization run by aliens. Seven months after the Nintendo Entertainment System made its debut in the US, the company Sega came out with their answer to the Nintendo Entertainment System in the form of the Sega Master System. It included the same basic design, cartridge slot, wired controllers, and also had its own accessories including light gun and joystick controller. However, by 1988, Nintendo commanded 83% of the North American video game market share. This was due in part to Nintendo's policy of third-party licensors not releasing video games on competing consoles. This left the Master System deprived of many arcade and NES hit titles. However, they did do some in-house developing and managed to come up with great games such as Altered Beast, where you take on the role of a Greek warrior who is resurrected by the god Zeus to save his daughter from the Lord of the Underworld, Hades. You can transform into various forms, such as a werewolf or a dragon, or other mythical beings. Shinobi, where you take on the role of a ninja who is trying to save children from evil ninjas. Or Outrun 3D, which is the port of the popular arcade version. The 16-bit era is when the console wars began to heat up. Nintendo released the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in November of 1990. With it came a new design. It went back to a top-loading cartridge slot, much like the Famicom. Like the Nintendo Entertainment System, it had accessories to play certain games. This included a light bazooka rather than a pistol, a mouse, which was used for a paint-like program, and others. The SNES also had an impressive library of games, but due to competition from Sega's 16-bit console, it no longer had exclusive titles from third-party developers. Some popular examples of in-house development include Super Mario World, the first game for the SNES, which was packaged with the system. Star Fox, which utilized the Super FX chip, an enhancement chip which made 3D worlds possible on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. And Donkey Kong Country, a game which uses 3D models and rivaled some 32-bit games at the time. Sega also had a 16-bit system named as the Mega Drive system in other regions, but as the Genesis in North America due to a trademark dispute. Despite being released 2.5 years earlier than the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in North America, the Genesis didn't see much popularity due to Nintendo's death grip on the North American market shares. However, in arcades, the Sega System 16, which was their arcade platform, was wildly successful. Some examples of Genesis games include an updated version of Altered Beast from the arcade version,
Welcome to your doom.
and Sonic the Hedgehog, the game responsible for Sega outselling Nintendo during the 1991 holiday season. The fierce competition between Nintendo and Sega would lead to various ad campaigns. Sega developed their campaigns to show that they were the cool new console and that Nintendo was in the past. Their slogan was, "Genesis does what Nintendo don't." And what follows is one of the many television commercials that were aired at the time.
Who does the first ever 8-meg game, the ultimate in gameplay, voted Game of the Year? Who does the third generation of the hot arcade hit Shinobi and lifelike 16-bit graphics? Does. Who gives you 2 stereo speakers free so you hear the great stereo sound of Genesis? Just buy any 3 Sega Genesis brand games before March and get 2 stereo speakers free.
One of the most popular consoles of the 32-bit era was the PlayStation. It was released in December of 1994, and by March 31st, 2005, the PlayStation and PS1, a smaller version of the PlayStation, had sold 102 million units, becoming the first console to reach the 100 million mark. Its lineup of games includes such titles as Final Fantasy VII, a role-playing game from developer Square, now Square Enix, and it is the first game in the Final Fantasy series to use 3D graphics and fully rendered characters on pre-rendered backgrounds. And Marvel vs. Capcom, a fighting game where you could select characters from the Marvel Comics series or from series of games by the developer Capcom. Also notable at this time is the last console Sega would ever produce, the Dreamcast. This console was released on September 9th, 1999, and despite being hailed as ahead of its time, production of the console stopped in 2002 because the new chairman of Sega wanted to focus on software. We would also see newcomer Microsoft introduce their console, the Xbox. It was released on November 15th, 2001, and was in direct competition with the Dreamcast and PlayStation 2. 2 things would make the Xbox successful: the online service it introduced, Xbox Live, where other players can play each other online, and Halo Combat Evolved, a first-person shooter that would go on to become one of the biggest video game franchises ever. And finally, the PlayStation 2. It was released October 26, 2000, and it is the best-selling console to date with 142 million units sold worldwide. With game production for the console still in continuation today, Sony has stated that the life cycle of the console will continue until demand ceases. And this leaves us with 3 current consoles available today: the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and the Nintendo Wii. Who will come out on top? Only time will tell.
Like everybody else, it was kind of like Super Mario Brothers and Contra and, you know, some other Ghouls and Goblins on the NES, that kind of stuff. So that's what I kind of started off as, but what I'd say what really kind of got me into gaming more on a serious basis, I suppose, would be like RPG, role-playing games, which isn't as bad as it sounds.
Well, for me, unlike like everyone else, I'd prefer storyline. I like to see what's going on, what's happening, why the character got where they are. That's the basics for me.
Well, that gets into dangerous territory when you start telling people, I play games so that way I can throw a car through a building, and I'm acting out a fantasy. But I mean, I could see people like, it's fun. Like, on Prototype, I get to run across the city, pick up a car, jump up to the top of a building, chuck it at a fucking zombie down on the ground, and it's just like, I mean, yeah, I could see how people, that's not something you can really do in real life for the most part, at least I don't think, but, it is escape for some people. It's the same thing as going to see a movie, or the same thing as, I think it's not necessarily like people are doing it to try and act out fantasies or anything like that, but it's the same thing as like going to see a movie. It's fun. you're having fun. It takes your mind off the current situations, because in a lot of games you actually have to focus to be able to defeat stuff. So
everyone's got their favorites and their classics. No one can beat the old school Mario, and everyone's still got old familiar game companies like Sega, Capcom, even Squaresoft, or Square Enix now. But in all, it's still the same businesses, same companies as ever. Nintendo will be around for a long time. Sony will probably still be there, as well as Xbox.